So want to have as much of this participative as possible. So I've just got, I suppose, a starting question. I'd also like you to give you the opportunity to ask each other questions and to throw it out to the audience. But I've certainly found them both extraordinarily inspiring stories. So I guess the way I would frame, perhaps most obviously your work, Alexi, but also to a large degree yours, Stephanie, is you are hacking. You're hacking a system. So there is an existing system which is now the political structure. There is an opening which was created by this new legislation where people can put forward policy. So then you say, all right, well, let's exploit that. How do we work with this to be able to make this as much an opportunity as possible so that the population can indeed seize this opportunity to the best of its availabilities to actually make some change. And so similarly, Stephanie and you have existing structures and you saw a possibility, and so you hacked the system and the structures to be able to create an opening for this to happen. So suppose that we extend that, what are the news beyond what you have already achieved in each of your domains? What other spaces or openings or opportunities are there to hack out or to create new opportunities to build new things? Where are the opportunities for innovation, I suppose, in identifying and seizing new opportunities or spaces? I mean, perhaps Alexi, start?
Yeah, great. This is a great question, because now you're asking, look forward and see what's out there, like the lottery next week. I would say that there are loads and loads of them. So if you just take a look at any system, if you think the system is optimal, yeah, probably there is not too much room to hack, right? Even then you can make a revolution. But most of the systems are not optimal. So there are so many different little and large spaces where you can make a big difference. Let me give you a few examples of this. In Finland at the moment, a few guys are working, like in US, there is this Code for America. So we have similar thing in Europe, Code for Europe. And there are a few fellows who are working with the city of Helsinki, and they are devising at the moment hacking city navigator. So it is not only giving you the route planning like the existing route planners for the public logistics, but it is using the real-time information. Where are the cars or the metro trains at the moment that you could be using? And this is just one example. But these kind of things could happen everywhere. The opportunities are out there.
I would say, at least in the United States and everywhere, there's a huge... There's a huge open data movement happening, and in the US, President Obama 2 weeks ago signed a new executive order saying that all government data must be open and machine readable by default moving forward. That's huge and very, very disruptive, right, to government and how we do things in the past. And so now agencies have to look at that and say, how are we going to open our data? How are we going to work differently with shrinking resources to really accomplish these unfunded mandates? And so I think that by having at least my case study of an example of how you could tap into the public to help us achieve these unfunded mandates and achieve the goal of opening data and making it more interactive, that's where I think things have to go in the future. But I think on an even bigger level, it's just using technology to change how government interacts with its citizens and looking at that new relationship. And I think crowdsourcing is one of those tools that we have for that partnership, which we're both utilizing.
I can give another example. In US, the big thing about law is that to use it effectively, you have to know the case law very precisely. In many parts of Europe, especially in Finland, we don't use the case law. However, even our law, which is, would I say, considerably smaller, it is not available. It's a crazy situation. Think about this. I am a citizen. I am required by the law to know the law and work like that, abide it. However, I don't have access to it. I have to buy a book. And at the same time, we hackers who hack the system, we are not using books. That's like the thing from the last millennium. We are using GitHub. So why is not the law in there? And at the moment, the copyright law says that you cannot place a copy of a copyright law into GitHub because it is a copyright infringement, even though law and copyright law are in public domain. And this is like, what? And we are planning, are we going to go around this and utilize some crowdsourcing so that there are so many targets in the country of ours that the police cannot come after you, or whether we are doing some other kind of hacking, but we need to get the law into GitHub to be able to hack on it. So there are opportunities. Actually, US or Canadian law has been put in GitHub, and German law, I think, also during this spring as well. So things are moving forward, but too slow for my taste.
And along those lines, the new open data policy that we released, part of that is Project Open Data, which is on GitHub as well. And so now people throughout the US and around the world are actually commenting on the next iteration of open data policy for the US. Like, it's a crowdsourced experiment. And that's the first time we're trying to make policy with the crowd. So that's leaps and bounds progress for the US government.
Yeah, so if we continue from there, who of you, can you raise your hand if you are not a hacker, if you are not a techie, if you don't do the tech stuff, you do everything else except the tech stuff? Yeah, I am a hacker, but I was just like pointing which way. So all of you guys, you can hack the system as well. Hacking the system is not about using computer. It is about being imaginative what to do with what you have already. You don't have to have technical skills. In open ministry, we have only few techies. Most of the people who are doing this thing are not techies. We need all types of people. We need journalists as well as the lawyers, as well as just the people who come and pack things when we have to mail them. So there is really room for everybody.
Do you have any questions for each other? Pointed questions? Or?
Yeah, I do. I'm not trying to start a fight here, even though I was kind of asking for it earlier. How sustainable do you think that the model that you were using is? Like, as a one-time thing, this is a great thing, but are you able to like repeatedly pull it and make it together?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I've presented at a lot of different government conferences in the US, and people afterwards from different agencies come up to me and say, I'm so glad to hear someone's made it through, because so many other people have gotten stopped and stuck somewhere along the way and haven't been able to do the complete picture and actually utilize the crowd. And so with these tools, it's not policy, it's not White House policy like my case study, it's just that, a case study. But now at least other agencies have that and could go to our lawyers who approved it and have those conversations. But it's not so easy that we trailblazed the exact blueprint for everyone else to follow. Every case of crowdsourcing in any agency, not just the government, is unique. And every data set is unique. And every project is unique, so nothing is exactly replicable. So in that sense, you still need someone, a champion, basically, to kind of push it forward for that specific data set. And there's a lot of reasons, as I said before, that people will say no. So you have to really believe to try to get to yes.
Do you have a question for Alexi?
I don't, yeah.
We might get to it.
Yeah.
So I'd like to put out questions to the audience and also on the hashtag if you want. So go up.
So the first question is for both of you, especially for Stephanie. You talked about how you're seeing this shift, not a shift, but you're seeing these possibilities where crowdsourcing is not only about asking people to create content, but also curating content which is out there. Are you seeing that happen? Can you elaborate on that and talk about how, if and how you're seeing it happen elsewhere, beyond what you talked about?
I think that it's something, at least at my agency at USAID, we're like the pilot that I'm doing now with the United Nations is a pilot to see how it goes. But our administrator, Rajiv Shah of USAID, is talking to the United Nations now about the possibility of expanding that pilot to see if we could use that in other sectors. So just one note about big data. I don't know if you have heard, this is like for non-techies in the room, but in the United States, if you're, people who, actually anywhere, if you Google where's the flu or flu symptoms, they've been able to predict where the flu is spreading within the United States and around the world just based on Google searches. And so if you think about the health implications globally of the spread of global diseases by utilizing big data and seeing what's out there and harvesting that, there's so much potential. And as you know, probably in government, it takes a while to program new, to do the programming for new initiatives and projects. And so the idea of using big data to instantly get information and then speed up the programming is a game changer for how we work in government and the speed at which we need to work to solve these global problems. And so, again, for my agency, which I can speak to best, I think that we're taking that step now. But in a year, we can talk about what all the progress, not just in my sector, economic growth, but in global health, in democracy and governance, and in every area in which we work.
I've got to be quick. I think we've got a lot of other questions coming.
Yeah, and the second question is both of you have used location-based platforms in your crowdsourcing initiatives, crowd mapping. There's Ushahidi to do that. There are WordPress and Drupal plugins which allow you to do it. Is there, what's in your mind, what's the best sort of out-of-the-box, if any, software out there for creating crowd mapping platforms?
So I'm not going to say the best because I'm not allowed to endorse any specific platform.
I can say the best.
I will say the best. But I'll say the reason for my specific project, I actually chose Esri Maps, which was a free open source tool. And I love the Google Maps, and many of the other map platforms. The reason I chose Esri is because they had a storytelling map where you could populate many different maps in one place and kind of tell the story that you're trying to tell through these different tabs. And so versus having one map that's really interactive, I had 4. And so I really liked that format for storytelling. And again, I'm not from the CIO's office, I'm a communication specialist. So I was trying to tell our story in a new way through these maps. So that was the best instance for what I was looking for, but I've also used Google in other instances, and I think they all have pros and cons, and it's just what you're looking to do.
Yeah, this is the official answer. But the right answer is OpenStreetMap, by far. It is crowdsourced, it has a widest variety of information, everybody can contribute. If you think something is wrong, you can fix it. You are not relying on some third party. When it comes to the front end, there are multiple libraries. We were using Leaflet, but I mean, if you Google, there are maybe 10 different JavaScript libraries that you can use, and most of them allow multiple backends. So you can use Esri or Nokia or Navteq or whichever you fancy. So yeah, there are pros and cons, but I prefer, of course, yeah, as an open source idiot, OpenStreetMap. No question about that.
This question is for Alexei. What if somebody wants to promote a law that is totally reprehensible, and it gets 50,000 votes, like take, for instance, corporal punishment, something that is homophobic or anti-immigrant, or like, for instance, you had equal marriage on the platform. What about anti-gay marriage that you may not approve of?
Yeah, very, very good question. There are multiple parts to this, so actually the topic is quite complex, but I try to keep it short and simple. We as Open Ministry, we are for all kinds of ideas. So ideally, there would be ideal like equal marriage, and then there would be at the same time anti-equal marriage. Because then that would mean that there would be real debate and people could really be able to jump on board and maybe even come up with a third solution. That would be good deliberation. There are things that cannot go through. So if your law that you are proposing is clearly racist as it is, you are breaking law by making that. But that doesn't mean that you cannot change most of the laws. So if you can change the laws gradually even towards the racism that is doable, but you have to gain at every step more and more support, and of course people are going to get crazy. So it's not never going to be passing. And the best part about the system like we have at the moment is that if the crowds go crazy, we have the parliament. They have to vote, and I trust the politicians to that extent that even though they don't often do right things, at those critical moments they will deny. And at the same time, the same applies, that even if we have a good idea, the parliament might actually say, no, this is not passing. We cannot do anything for it except just like push it again and again. But as a feature of the system, we as Open Ministry, we try to help everybody. But of course, we are individuals. And if something is really clearly against my values, I won't be helping personally. But I hope there will be someone else who would be able to help even that cause. So as a group of people, we hope we can kind of support all the different varieties of society. But yeah, there are always edge cases. At the moment, we just have to get the ball rolling, and when it's rolling, we can then decide like what to do with the really hard ones. So far, we haven't seen any.
Alexi, how are you financed?
That is a very good question. And the answer is very simple. This year, our finances are, so we are not financed. And that also means that we are quite independent. But it also brings problems. At the moment, we are applying for maybe 4 or 5 different funds. We haven't heard about any of them yet. Hopefully, we will get for the rest of the year. But at the moment, we are completely unfinanced. And so far, we have gotten 30,000 euros. And that was used mostly to pay up for developer 6 months to come to develop the website further. The first version was done completely crowdsourced among the hackers, and most of the features after that even has been done in the same way. So we are really bootstrapping, but I hope we will get funding. And in case someone knows some friendly pocket with plenty of money to throw, we are one prime candidate, so I'm looking forward.
Where did that 30,000 euro come from?
That was coming from kind of governmental related funding who try to promote innovation and who were completely apolitical, and actually we are also completely apolitical, and that's maybe one of the reasons why it's going to be a bit hard to get money, because many of the parties or many people who are like within the the political system, they want to promote some agenda. So we are not in as easy situation like you. When you say you don't have any resources, you mean not too many millions. And I mean that, yeah, Epi, you have to fly me here.
My question's about feedback loops that you've seen as a consequence of the transparency that each of your initiatives have brought. How have you seen behavior change? Alexi, in your case, how has it impacted the public policy debate? And in the USAID case, how do you see the USAID priorities or even grant recipients changing the way they behave?
I guess that's so. There are multiple things to that, like starting with the idea of open ministry. It has been developing quite a bit during the past year, even though the main vision has been there and staying the same. The details are, of course, changing a lot per what actually works. When it comes to the discussion in the public sphere, what are people talking about things? I can say that there is a huge change in even the sound of rhetorics. Previously, the people who were banning the fur farming, they were attacking the fur farms. They went there during the night, they took some shots, they tried to make a fuss about it, and they were almost declared, you are terrorists. And now the politicians are thanking, great that you come here with this democratic vehicle and that you are not terrorists. So it is clearly working already, and I think it's a very positive change.
So I would say at the program level, we've seen changes in terms of how we program future guarantee projects. When you see everything on a map instead of in charts, you really are able to visualize your data differently and understand it differently. So for example, if you meant for a program to target the entire north of a country, but then on a map you see every loan has actually been in the northeast and none have been in the northwest, then you can start asking why, and maybe we should target a specific region in our next program instead of just the North. So that's been really interesting for the people in the field to utilize the maps. But at a cultural level, I think that the feedback loop has been just changing the culture at USAID and wanting to be even more innovative and to think outside the box more. And people have seen that you get rewarded and not punished when you step outside of the box and you think differently about how you can do your work. And once you acknowledge that as a government we don't have a monopoly on ideas and that we could benefit from, and trust that outside of government we can do our jobs better, I think that change starts happening and penetrating within the government. So that's all of the feedback loop I've seen so far in the last year.
Especially as Open Ministry starts looking at expanding into Italy and other places, you guys are starting to set a standard for what a platform like this can look like. Don't you think that you're being derelict to a responsibility to the future of open politics in Europe by not dealing with those topics?
This is a very, very good question. I really enjoy it. And also the points that you were raising earlier in your presentation. Yeah, I think we should think about what kind of standard we are doing, definitely. If you're asking like, is this acceptable level of standard? I think in an ideal world, definitely not. So what I urge is that wherever in the other parts of the world where maybe not all things can be discussed that easily, come and hack with us. Let's make a better open ministry which also allows the anonymity angle on there. Maybe even in multiple ways. So I'm definitely pro that. And if I get the funding, the no resources, then it means even I could maybe develop and push it forward towards that direction. But at the moment, when you have nothing and you have to concentrate, we have to focus and try to keep it as lean and mean and just get forward. But in the future, definitely the standard needs to be raised a lot. But I don't think that there is one simple standard that will fit all the cases. So all the countries, they are very different and they will have their different needs. And I'm pretty sure that in some democracies, it will be mandatory that you have to be able to find out the identities. And in some others, there will be way more leeway. Maybe even that the discussion needs to be handled anonymously, but only voting will be then maybe some pseudonym kind of thing. Yeah.
I mean, I think because those standards don't exist yet, because we don't know what the standards for how discussion in this kind of context should happen yet, you guys are in a position of creating those standards, which is why it matters more the choices that you make. And, you know, I hear you on resource constraints and stuff, and we should definitely talk about, what a different model might look like and other things. But, I think that your choices aren't just your choices for your platform, given the context there.
Yeah, especially if it starts to kind of grow, definitely it's going to have wider implications. But again, I welcome all the cooperation here. So anyone with the better ideas, you are free to fork, or you can contribute, or we go with the open source way, like Linux.
Which, though, is the nub of your pushback against Alexia around the identification, authentication versus anonymity?
I mean, on that specific issue,
because
especially in European politics right now, I mean, there are a lot of very sensitive hot button issues around, say, immigration. I mean, if you look at the rise of the true Finns in Finland, there are actually places where, yeah, someone might actually feel, I live in a small town in northern Finland. I can't speak out for immigrants' rights because they'll come and beat me up. Like, that happens. Even in, in many ways very peaceful Scandinavian democracy like Finland, or the whole Janta law, like that, that set of concepts, there are things that people just won't say because it's like, oh no, that opinion is too far out from the social norm. So that this is the platform choices that you make around even very small details about whether or not even whether you can find out about someone's identity, about whether it's anonymous by default in the UI or this or that. Those actually those shape society in ways that we're not used to thinking of it being within our power to shape society.
I think this is where we are getting to new territory in terms of what is democracy, and because we can, for example, have anonymous and we can have authenticated conversations, and the roles for each of those in emerging society and democracy and government is something we are discovering. I don't think we can say we know the answer, though I would agree with Alexi, there is a role for both. I think there are some authenticated conversations we do want to have, and there are probably some anonymous conversations we want to have as well. So part of the question would then be, what are the right spaces to have those authenticated anonymous conversations?
Yeah, I'm definitely not saying that all conversations should be anonymous or anything like that. What I'm mostly saying, though, is that it behooves platforms that are starting to set nascent standards to make that conversation explicit, to make it explicit within the system that, hey, something should be anonymous and something shouldn't, even if it actually makes the system less useful, right? Even if it sometimes means that, oh, we found out that all these anonymous flame wars happen, and it turns out that that isn't, you know, anonymity doesn't actually encourage flame wars. There's many other things that do. But, you know, the onus is to say, okay, let's collectively start having this conversation. Because if you say, okay, hey, this isn't fixed, we're not trying to set a standard, we need to have a conversation here, you don't accidentally set standards.
Yeah, so I completely agree. However, there are multiple angles even to this. So what I've already been thinking, I haven't been implementing at all, but if someone fancies to push forward, just contact me. I look forward to collaborate. I would love to set up something like open ministry, or maybe collaboration like liquid feedback that you were mentioning earlier, and combine those within a totally anonymous network like Tor networks, and then make the accounts also as anonymous as possible. It's a bit tricky question how to solve it, but yeah, let's assume it's doable. I would love to do it. However, while doing the favor for anonymity, we also do the disfavor for accessibility. So then there are loads and loads of people who really need this kind of ability to be able to talk in privacy, who simply don't know how. And you really need plenty of hand-holding, like teaching people in the libraries how to do this thing. And for that kind of scaling, you need to have those people who are willing to go to the libraries and start to do this kind of teaching for the people. So it requires huge movement. And I see that we need to take the first steps to start to grow there, but as a direction, I definitely welcome that.
I mean, in the same way that, I think there's a lot of room for prototyping here, right? You know, yes, having the hardened Tor system might be the ideal. We don't need to do that to not accidentally set the standard. You know, that's just, hey, you know, here's a thing that will cause a certain conversation.